Going to the bathroom, huh? Going to the bathroom.
Okay. Hola, Carlos.
Hola, Lester, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Bien, todo muy bien. ¿Tienes tal vez actualizado el número de participantes?
Estamos sobre los 50, Carlos. No tengo la lista completa ahora porque de tu Cancillería todo el mundo me ha estado mandando un correo cada 2 minutos recién. Entonces mandé como 20, 25 links en las últimas media hora y no he podido actualizar la lista. Pero nos quedan los correos de registro y yo te actualizo la lista después.
No te preocupes, muchas gracias. Me voy a poner en mute un momento, ya regreso.
Still there? Still working? Still working? Oh.
Hello, Magdalena.
Hi. Hi.
Can you hear us, Magdalena? You're mute.
Sorry, I can hear you well.
There you.
I have a little echo.
Me too.
Buenas tardes, embajador.
Hola, buenas tardes, Lester. Qué gusto.
El gusto es mío, señor embajador.
Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Hello. Nada.
Very good.
How are you doing? Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
I am receiving a turn in the audio. Do you know what is this problem come from? Hola Carlos, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, embajador, ¿cómo está? No sé si tiene audífonos, a veces ayuda. Yo también
Ok,
estoy escuchando un retorno, de hecho, a mí.
déjame ver. I didn't say hello, Marine. Good afternoon. And
Hola,
thank you.
ambassador.
And thank you for being with us. And you will be the moderator. And thank you for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for organizing this online conference. It's a great opportunity to collaborate with the ambassador because he joined us like the first time, I think, for us. So it's a great opportunity. So very happy to moderate this panel.
Thank you so much. Let me check if I have earphones. Sorry.
Hello, good afternoon, Madalena and Marine. Nice to see you.
Hi. Thank you. It's a bit problematic. One question. I have a PowerPoint. Do you want me to
Okay.
send it, or do you want me to share the screen?
I think it's best if you share your screen because then you're in control of your presentation.
Okay, so that I will be. The screen says that I can share the screen when I am the presenter. So now I can, for example.
And now you're a presenter. Yes.
I am still having this return of the voice.
Ambassador, I believe that it's because other of us are with the microphone unmute. So I think that if we closer once the other person is talking, I believe will be good. Good afternoon, Lucas. Nice to see you.
Likewise. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Good afternoon, Mr. Roda. How are you doing? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Now we are waiting for Deputy Foreign Minister of Ecuador, who will be connecting very soon. He told me that he will be connecting a few minutes earlier to check the audio and the micro. Lester, ¿estás ahí?
Sí, embajador.
El embajador Cabrera dice que ya está conectado.
Ahora mismo lo dejo ingresar, embajador.
Gracias.
Arturo Cabrera Hidalgo, ¿no?
Sí, exacto. Arturo, ¿me escuchas?
Escucho, Andrés, sí.
Ah, qué gusto, bienvenido, Arturo.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Vamos a esperar unos minutos antes de comenzar para dar tiempo a los que se han inscrito que se conecten.
Ujú. Por supuesto, sí.
Gracias, Arturo.
Buenas tardes, embajador Cabrera. ¿Cómo está?
Buenas tardes. ¿Qué tal, Carlos? ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, gracias.
Good afternoon, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us for this very interesting event of today.
Good afternoon, Maureen. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon, Ambassador. Very nice to meet you, and thank you for the invitation.
Good afternoon, Madalena and Lucas.
Good afternoon also. Thank you for the invitation.
Señor viceministro, ¿la conexión le funciona bien?
Sí, está
¿Escucha
muy
las
claro.
conversaciones? Ok, excelente. Mucho gusto, Lester Ortega, Embajada de Guatemala.
Un gusto, les escucha bien también, ¿no?
Sí, se le escucha perfectamente bien.
Can I maybe try to share the screen?
Yes, of course.
Thanks. Okay. It works. Do you
Excellent.
see it?
Yes.
Thank- Okay.
I don't seem to be able to share my screen or share my presentation.
It's my fault I have not assigned you privileges as presenter. So now you should have them.
Let's see.
So I will do this. You want to test it now?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. Because I can only assign it to one person at a time. So I will be switching between you and Madalena. That seems to be working fine, Lucas.
Ah, great. All right. Thank you very much.
Lester, me dicen que está esperando que les asignen para la reunión. Esperamos hasta las 4.
Salvo que ustedes ya estén listos, pero ya todos van a escuchar nuestra conversación.
Creo que ya podríamos dejarlos entrar, si les parece.
Ok.
Muchas gracias.
¿Me escuchan ahí?
No?
Okay, it's time to start our event. With your permission, Vice Minister and Ambassador, I would like to greet everyone that has managed to join us today at this very special event. My name is Lester Ortega. I'm from Le Club de Droit International. I would like to greet everyone, Excellencies, friends, and colleagues that have connected. And it is a great pleasure for us as Le Club de Droit to collaborate with the Embassy of Ecuador in the Netherlands to bring this event to you. Within the new reality that the pandemic has imposed on all of us, we are glad that we can still reach you through the platforms that we are all so familiar with now. Today's event, Business and Human Rights, Access to an Effective Remedy for Victims in the Frame of the Legally Binding Instrument, is a timely discussion. And we are very happy that the Embassy of Ecuador has brought to us a list of stellar speakers. And precisely to start that discussion and introduce our keynote speaker, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency, Ambassador Andrés Terán, the Ambassador of Ecuador in the Netherlands, who we extend our kindest pleasure, thanks for the pleasure of collaborating with you. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Now, okay, thank you very much, Lester, for your kind words. Dear colleagues, professors, students, and distinguished guests, first, I would like to thank Le Club de Droit International, co-organizing of this event, for the invaluable collaboration to prepare this webinar, and to the speakers who kindly accepted being with us. In the first place, my sincere appreciation to our keynote speaker, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Ecuador, Ambassador Arturo Cabrera, and to the panelists, Mrs. Magdalena Neglia, Director of Globalization and Human Rights at the International Federation for Human Rights, and to Professor Lucas Rorda, researcher at Utrecht University. The release of Ecuador's Draft Zero in 2018 and a subsequent revision mark a new phase in the negotiations over a legally binding instrument on business and human rights in the frame of the open-ended intergovernmental working group on transnational corporation and other business enterprises with respect to human rights. Together with the input of NGOs and civil society organizations, the working group under the chair of Ecuador will have its sixth session from 26 to 30 October 2020, so next week. I would like to take this opportunity to invite and encourage government representatives, academia, NGOs, civil society, and people interested on businesses and human rights to get involved in this process in Geneva. Dear guests, with no further delay, I have the honor to introduce the keynote speaker, Ambassador Arturo Cabrera, Deputy Foreign Minister of Ecuador. Ambassador Cabrera is a career diplomat who has a large experience of work in bilateral and multilateral missions such as Washington, D.C., Geneva, The Hague, and Ankara. In the academic field, she is a PhD researcher at Leiden University, Master in Government and Public Administration by Harvard University, Doctor of Jurisprudence and degree in Political Science from the Catholic University of Ecuador, Visiting Fellow of the University of Cambridge, researcher at the Center for Higher International Studies of the University of Geneva, among others. Now, it is with great pleasure give the floor to the Deputy Foreign Minister, Ambassador Arturo Cabrera. You have the floor, dear Ambassador Cabrera.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon in The Hague and good morning in Quito. Distinguished Ambassador and friend Andrés Terán, Ambassador of the Republic of Ecuador to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Distinguished expert panelists, Ms. Madalena Neglia and Dr. Lucas Rorda. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to have this opportunity to share with you some thoughts on the issue of access to an effective remedy for victims in the form of a legally binding instrument of business and human rights. In my current capacity as Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ecuador, and previously as Ambassador in Geneva, working with former chairpersons of the United Nations Working Group that elaborates the international legally binding instrument on business and human rights, I recognize that this conference constitutes a new and significant opportunity to reiterate the importance of advancing in compliance with human rights standards in the framework of commercial activities. Scholars and practitioners of international human rights law keep on debating today on the issue of the protection of human rights in the context of business activities. Certainly, one could say this conversation that started at least 4 decades ago has progressed very little. Nonetheless, this debate has probably been the most exciting and complex issues of the last decade within the framework of international law in the context of the activities of the United Nations Human Rights Council. On one hand, the adoption of the 2011 United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights and the creation of its working group of 5 experts to implement them served to revitalize the debate and to propose the first framework of accepted departure. On the other hand, the creation in 2014 of a separate United Nations Working Group with the mandate to elaborate an international legally binding instrument on business and human rights allowed to deepen the discussion on nature, effectiveness, and binding and non-binding international human rights standards. How can we organize this complex debate from a conceptual point of view? I argue that we can only understand the importance and legal implications of this debate if we are able to focus on how to ensure equal access to justice for all persons by the negative impacts of business activities. To illustrate my point, I would like to divide this short intervention in 3 parts. Firstly, I will argue that the UN Guiding Principles lack the necessary strength regarding access to justice for victims. Secondly, I will present the idea of access to justice for victims as the notion that lies at the very heart of the elaboration of a legally binding instrument. Thirdly, I will briefly discuss the legal configuration of access to justice for victims within the revised draft of the legally binding instrument. Additionally, in each of the 3 sections, I will highlight the key role of my country, Ecuador, in the shaping of this debate. It is difficult to understand the discussion on business and human rights during the last decade without making reference to key actors. In this sense, it is worth noting that diplomatic efforts of Ecuador throughout this process and its globally leading multilateral position on this issue, based on strong and principled convictions of foreign policy on the protection of the human rights of the most vulnerable persons have been of importance in this process. With regard to my first point, I maintain that the third pillar of the UN guiding principles were born, flowed from the very beginning, precisely due to the lack of a real effective protection of the actual or potential victims by business activities. It is important to recognize that the adoption of the UN guiding principles by the Human Rights Council in 2011 meant an important step forward in the field of business of human rights. Indeed, the guiding principles gathered non-binding international standards in the field and included three pillars following the threefold objective to protect, respect, and remedy, which constituted the framework proposed by the United Nations in relation to human rights. Those three pillars were, in a few, three ideas: obligations for the state, responsibility for corporations, and access to remedy. The first pillar stated that states must protect against human rights abuse within their territory and or jurisdiction by third parties, including business enterprises. The second pillar established business enterprises should respect human rights, which means that they should avoid infringing rights of others and should address adverse human rights impacts with which they are involved. And the third pillar proposed that states must take appropriate steps to ensure through judicial, administrative, legislative, or other appropriate means that when abuses occur,